Most people wake up every day and repeat the exact same sequence, same thoughts, same habits, same emotional reactions. They don't even realize it, but their entire life is running on autopilot. It's like their brain is stuck in a loop, recycling yesterday into today and calling it a life. And if you don't force yourself to stop that cycle, one day you'll look back and realize you lived the same year 70 times and called it a life. The truth is, your brain doesn't care if you're happy. It cares if you're efficient. It wants to conserve energy, so it hardwires patterns. But the problem is, not all patterns serve you. Not all habits are helpful. And unless you interrupt those unconscious behaviors, you will never reset anything. You'll just reinforce more of what's already been there. Resetting your life starts by getting radically honest with yourself. Where are you on autopilot? What are you doing each day simply because it's familiar, not because it's right? You have to catch yourself in the act. That moment when you reach for your phone, the second you wake up. That moment when you justify skipping the gym again. That moment when you tell yourself, it's just who I am. That's the moment you have to pause. That pause is power. That's where change lives. If you want to reset, you have to develop the ability to disrupt the pattern right there in real time. You have to override your programming, and that doesn't happen by reading books or making to-do lists. It happens by choosing differently when it's hardest to do so. The reset begins not in the massive moves, but in the micro decisions you make moment to moment. Every time you say no to what's easy and yes to what's necessary, you're rewriting your script. You're literally training your nervous system to respond differently. But don't expect it to feel good. In fact, expect resistance. Expect discomfort. Your old patterns will scream for your attention like a child throwing a tantrum. That's when most people cave. They interpret the discomfort as a sign that something's wrong. But no, discomfort is a sign you're moving. That internal friction means you're not running the same code anymore. That's the feeling of growth. It's not pleasant, but it's progress. And you need to protect that reset energy like your life depends on it, because it does. Once you've interrupted the loop, don't go back. Don't tell yourself you'll start again Monday. Don't wait for motivation. Act like your future depends on today, because it does. Get obsessed with catching the old you trying to sneak back in. Recognize the old voice, the old excuses, the old rhythm, and silence it with decisive action. If you want a new life, you can't keep rehearsing the old one. There comes a moment when you have to look in the mirror and decide that autopilot is no longer acceptable. That surviving is no longer enough. That existing isn't the same as living. And in that moment, you don't need permission. You don't need more time. You need one thing to interrupt the pattern, because that's where the reset begins. When you think about changing your life, most people rush to fix their habits, their schedule, their diet. But none of that truly sticks unless you go deeper, down to the root of how you see yourself, your identity. Because no matter how much you try to change your behavior, if deep down you still believe you're lazy, undisciplined, broken, or behind, you will always sabotage your own progress. You will always find a way back to who you believe you are. The brain is incredibly efficient at keeping your reality aligned with your identity. So if you keep telling yourself, this is just who I am, then congratulations, you've just locked in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Here's the truth. Your identity isn't fixed. It's not some permanent label stamped on your forehead. It's a story. And stories can change. But the problem is, most people are reciting the same internal story over and over again, usually one they didn't even choose. They inherited it, picked it up from a teacher, a parent, a bad experience, and now it's running silently in the background, dictating every move they make. That's why people say, I don't know why I keep doing this. It's because the identity hasn't changed. The external changes won't hold unless the internal wiring shifts first. You want to reset your life. Then start by resetting how you see yourself. You must become brutally aware of the labels you've been carrying. I'm not consistent. I'm not good with money. I always give up. These are not facts. These are decisions you keep repeating. If you want to truly transform, you have to replace those statements with ones that serve the future you, not the past. Start saying, I'm the kind of person who shows up even when it's hard. Say it before you believe it. Say it before it feels true. That's how it becomes true, because your nervous system responds to repetition. The more you rehearse a new identity, the more your brain starts to believe it. Your thoughts create emotions, your emotions create behaviors, and your behaviors confirm the identity. That's the loop. But the good news is you can hijack that loop. You can use that same process to program in a new version of you. Speak it. Feel it live like it's already real. And here's what's wild. Your brain doesn't need proof to believe it. It needs consistency. Keep showing up as that new identity, and eventually it becomes automatic. But let me tell you what won't work. Waiting until you feel like that new person. Waiting until life gives you permission to believe you've changed. That's not how it works. You go first. You shift your identity in action, not in thought. You don't become confident. You do confident things until it feels natural. You don't become disciplined. You act with discipline even when it feels fake. That's the bridge. You build it brick by brick, decision by decision. And one day you realize the old identity doesn't fit you anymore. It feels distant, outgrown, because it is. At some point, you stop running from who you were and start running toward who you were meant to be. And that's when the real reset begins. You can't reset your life and keep dragging the same noise along with you. It doesn't work. If you're serious about changing, if you're really ready to step into a new version of yourself, then you have to detox. And I'm not talking about juice cleanses or cutting caffeine. I mean, detox your mind, your inputs, your environment, your energy, because every single thing around you is either fueling your growth or feeding your decay. There is no neutral. Every word you hear, every scroll through your phone, every person you talk to, it's either helping you or hurting you. And most people don't even realize the amount of garbage they allow into their system on a daily basis. You're trying to evolve, but your environment is still stuck in the old story. You're trying to think clearly, but your mind is cluttered with the opinions of people who don't even live the life you want. You're trying to be disciplined, but you're surrounded by distractions that are engineered to steal your focus. That's like trying to sprint with ankle weights. You'll exhaust yourself before you ever hit your stride. If you want to reset, the first step is to cut the static. You need silence. You need clarity. You need to hear your own voice again. That starts with your digital diet. Pay attention to what you consume, the content you watch, the music you listen to, the conversations you engage in, because all of it is programming you, whether you like it or not. If you're constantly feeding your brain fear, gossip, negativity, and distraction, you're training yourself to stay stuck. But when you start feeding your mind focus, growth, truth, and purpose, you begin to clear the path for something new to take root. And just as important, maybe even more so, is your physical environment. Who's around you? What kind of energy do they bring? Because if you're trying to elevate and everyone around you is committed to staying the same, you will feel like a traitor just for growing. You'll shrink yourself to stay connected. You'll tone it down to be accepted. And slowly, you'll start choosing comfort over change. That's why you have to be ruthless. Protect your peace. If someone constantly brings chaos, doubt, excuses, distance yourself. It's not personal. It's survival. And I know that sounds harsh. I know not everyone can immediately walk away from their job, their family, or their city, but you can start small. You can control who gets access to your inner world. You can control who you give your time, your energy, your focus to. You can start detoxing by setting boundaries that prioritize your growth over your guilt. That's what a reset requires. Boundaries, clarity, standards. Because once your mind and your environment are clean, you can actually see, you can hear your future calling you. You can feel what you're meant to build. And without all the clutter, you start moving with a kind of precision that's almost impossible to describe. Everything gets sharper. And when that happens, momentum follows. If you want a new life, you can't keep breathing in the air of the old one. Clarity is not a luxury. It's a requirement. If you want to reset your life, you can't just say, I want things to be better. That's not a direction. That's a hope. You need to get aggressively clear about what better actually looks like. You have to define it so precisely that your mind has no choice but to chase it. Because your brain doesn't follow vague intentions, it follows targets. The sharper the target, the stronger the drive. And clarity isn't just about long-term vision. It's about zooming in and getting specific with your short-term outcomes too. Where do you want to be in 30 days? What do you want your morning routine to feel like? What kind of person do you want to become when stress hits you next week? When you define it, your body starts to orient itself toward that reality. Your nervous system actually begins to prime itself for it. And once that happens, your decisions begin to shift. Subconsciously, you begin to move with alignment, not confusion. Most people feel stuck not because they're incapable, but because they're foggy. They've never taken the time to sit down, clear out the noise, and ask, what do I actually want? And that question is hard. It forces you to take responsibility. It forces you to stop blaming the world and start constructing a blueprint. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's also liberating because the second you lock in on that vision, when it's not just something you wish for, but something you plan around, you start moving differently. That's what a reset really is. It's not just about walking away from what's not working. It's about running towards something that pulls you forward with force. You need that pull. You need something so clear it keeps you focused when distractions try to hijack your attention. When you don't feel like showing up, that clarity reminds you why you started. When your old habits whisper, come back. That vision says, keep going, write it down, say it out loud. Visualize it so clearly that your future feels more real than your past. And don't just focus on external achievements. Focus on how it feels. How does your day feel when you're living in alignment? How does your body feel, your mind, your relationships? Anchor into that because emotion drives action. The more you emotionally connect to your vision, the more likely you are to execute on it. And don't fall into the trap of thinking clarity means having every step figured out. It doesn't. Clarity means you know the S direction, even if the path isn't fully visible yet. It means you're not guessing who you're becoming. You've already met them in your mind. You're just catching up in real life. Without clarity, life pushes you around. With clarity, you start pulling life toward you. And that's when the reset shifts from something you're trying to something you've already claimed. There's a moment in every reset where thinking and planning are no longer enough. You've done the journaling. You've done the visualizing. You've talked about change, maybe even convinced yourself you're ready. But nothing shifts until you shock your system. That's the moment everything gets real because change isn't comfortable. It's not soft. It doesn't whisper. It demands. It disrupts. And sometimes it has to hurt a little to make sure it lands. That's the truth no one likes to hear. You cannot casually reset your life. You have to hit it with force. You have to interrupt your rhythm so intensely that your brain has no choice but to adapt. This is where most people stop. They think discomfort means something's wrong. They think resistance is a red flag. But the reality is, resistance is proof you're moving into new territory. The mind and body always push back at first. It's like cold water. You hesitate, you recoil. But if you stay in, if you breathe through the shock, something wild happens. Your system recalibrates. You adjust. You find a new baseline. That's how a reset happens. Not in theory, not in conversation, but in action that makes your comfort zone irrelevant. So what does this actually look like? It's waking up at 5 a.m. even though your body screams for the snooze button. It's cutting out sugar, alcohol, junk content, not because it's easy, but because you're building integrity. It's pushing through the reps, the miles, the hours of deep work when every cell in your body wants to quit. You force it, you override it, because that override is what teaches your brain we're not who we used to be. You don't need a perfect plan. You need momentum. One radical decision executed consistently can change your life, but it won't feel natural at first. That's the point. You're not reinforcing the old you, you're constructing the new one, and that construction site is messy. But messy is honest. Messy means motion. And if you stay with it long enough, that chaos becomes order. That effort becomes your new instinct. You have to be willing to do something that actually scares you. something that shakes you awake. That might mean a physical change. It might mean ending a relationship. It might mean starting the business, leaving the job, speaking the truth you've been avoiding. Whatever it is, it has to be big enough that it jolts your nervous system. You want it to feel like a reset, then it needs to feel. If it's too easy, it's just rearranging the furniture. A true reset is burning the blueprint and building something entirely different. And when you shock your system like that, when you prove to yourself that you can endure the discomfort, it builds a kind of power in you that no one can give and no one can take. That's not motivation. That's transformation. That's the moment the new you starts breathing. If you want to reset your life, you have to be willing to do what the old version of you would never even consider. Resetting your life isn't a one-time event. It's a daily decision. You don't wake up one morning magically transformed. You become the new version of yourself by building days that reflect the life you've committed to creating. Most people want to change, but they build days that belong to the person they're trying to leave behind. That's the disconnect. You say you want discipline, but your schedule is chaotic. You say you want peace, but your mornings are reactive. You say you want to level up, but your routines are stuck in low gear. Change doesn't happen in the big declarations. It happens in the small, repeated rhythms of your day. Every day you're laying bricks. The question is, are you building a foundation for the future or a prison of the past? You have to ask yourself that, because the structure of your day shapes your identity. If you want to reset your life, you must structure your life in a way that speaks to the future you, not the familiar you. That means waking up with purpose. That means carving out time for stillness, for learning, for physical movement. Not when it's convenient, but because it's who you are now. And here's the catch: you won't feel like it most days. You'll want to skip it, delay it, avoid it. That's exactly why it matters. That's exactly why it works. You're not waiting for motivation anymore. You're building systems. Because systems don't care how you feel. They just run. And when you stack those systems, clear mornings, focused work blocks, intentional recovery, you start sending a powerful message to your brain. This is the new normal. Over time, those decisions stop feeling forced. They become your new identity. And that identity starts producing results automatically because it's built into the structure of how you live. But let's be real. This takes discipline. This takes honesty. You can't lie to yourself about how your day is spent. If you're wasting hours scrolling, skipping the work, numbing your focus, then it's not a real reset. It's a temporary distraction. Resetting means holding yourself to a new standard even when no one is watching, especially then, because that's when character is formed. That's when momentum is born. You don't have to overhaul your entire life in one day. Start with one block of time, one decision, 1 hour that belongs to the highest version of you. Then repeat. Then expand. That's how you build a day. And a series of intentional days becomes a powerful life, not by accident, not by luck, but by design. At the end of the day, the life you're building will never exceed the quality of the days you're living. So ask yourself, does today reflect the person I say I'm becoming? If the answer is no, then the path forward is simple. Don't wait, don't wish. Build days that match your future. That's where the reset becomes real.